Hello vegan adventurers, welcome to the second day of snowboarding in Austrian Alps in Bad Gastein skiing center. You can see today is a perfect sunny weather, completely different than yesterday, so we should see some great views up there. And Sanya is coming as well. After about 20 minutes in the cabin, we got up to the top, and you can see that we got much better view than yesterday. You can see pretty much everything, even the highest peak in Austria, Grossglockner, one of these ones, and these peaks are over 2,500 meters, some of them. It's really high. So me and Sanya decided to stay up here and just enjoy the views, so we just bought one ticket up, because Sanya is not really into snowboarding that much. It will be not worth the money. We'll just get down like 2 times before the time would run out. So we're just gonna walk to the viewpoints around here and show you the views. So straight down here you can see the Bad Gastein town where we are living, and this is pretty much the Gastein Valley. And here somewhere in the distance you can see the Dachstein mountains where we've been in a spring cycling. So from here you can pretty much see the highest peaks in Austria. So as I said before, the quality of the ski slopes here in Austria is on top level, and here in these big skiing centers you have many routes to choose from, so it's much more interesting than on a small lift in Slovakia. So here you can see the ski station where we got up yesterday, and here some of these peaks are over 3,000 meters. One of them is Grossglockner. So this is the Easter time, beginning of April, so the snow down in the valleys, it already melted, but here up in the mountain it still stays, and it's one of the best skiing because you can enjoy the warm weather, but also the snow. The only thing you have to worry about is the high risk of avalanche during the warmer weather. I'm sure if you go on the official routes, the risk is really small. Here we met my brothers trying some unofficial slope snowboarding. So even though I used to be a snowboarding instructor in the past, I find it quite boring to go the same slope over and over again. It becomes almost like wakeboarding, where it's like initially adventurous, but then it becomes boring and you need to do different tricks and jumps, take more risks to keep the thrill. which increases the risk of misadventure and injury. That's why I prefer cross-country skiing and alpine skiing, where it's kind of like hiking in the snow and you can explore different places. And with alpine skiing you also get a thrill of going downhill. Plus you don't have to spend much money on the ski lift. So here we are at this restaurant viewpoint, same like yesterday, but today we got much better view. So here it shows that we should be able to see the highest peak of Austria, Großglockner, 1798 meters, and we should see it on the left of the hill straight in front of us, but we can't see it from here, so we should go more on the left. And here we are at the same bridge as yesterday, but again with much better view. So if you look down, some people even go down with snowboarding and skiing with this steep slope. So it's really crazy, but must be a lot of fun. It's incredible to think that many of these peaks in front are over 3000 meters, which is much higher than highest peak in Slovakia. So to get up on many of these peaks you would need to climb, and even in the summer must be a hard ascent, but would be something I want to learn in the future. So it's interesting how you need skiing or snowboarding glasses when it's snowing like yesterday, but you also need them when it's sunny like today, because the sun is just too bright reflecting from the snow and you can damage your eyes if you look without the glasses. It's interesting how they built this church just out of snow. And as we're going more on the left, we see a little bit of the Großglockner, but we should see even more as we go forward. And now we're going to the same viewpoint as yesterday, before finally going down. And here we finally see a better view of Großglockner. So it's again amazing what Austrians built. You have the signs with the names of the peaks around, so you know exactly what you're looking at. And here is another high peak, Kogel, 3250 meters. Okay, so we're getting the last views of this side before descending down, because we also need to travel back to Slovakia. But I would definitely want to come back to Austrian Alps also in the summer for some more hiking, because we didn't really hike in Austrian Alps before, except of the Dachstein mountains. It would be great to get up to some higher peaks above 3000 meters. Okay, so we are ready to descend. We took off a little bit earlier than the rest of the group because Sanya is not really keen on snowboarding and she'll descend a little bit slower, but I think she's making really good progress. So this first part of the slope is quite steep, so Sanya is doing what's called a falling leaf method, where she's pretty much going only on the hill side of the snowboard from left to the right. And this takes quite a lot of effort on the leg muscles. Especially down the steep slope, you have to balance out pretty hard. So to learn snowboarding is not so much about the skills as it's more about the courage to turn from the hillside to the tip side, because you have to go a little bit straight where you go a little bit more speed, and also not to be afraid to fall down. So that's why the guys have easier time learning snowboarding, because girls are much more afraid to fall down. Once you learn the pattern of turning, it becomes less scary and you would be able to turn in steeper and steeper hills. So as I mentioned before, snowboarding is really hard on your leg muscles because you have to pretty much balance out all the time, especially if you're a beginner going on the hillside or the tip side all the time. Unlike skiing, where if you're tired you can just turn on the side of the hill, but with snowboarding you have to sit down on the snow. You can get pretty wet and cold on your back quickly. So yeah, snowboarding can be pretty tough to learn if you're not willing to fall down and get really wet and cold. In this case, skiing might be a better option because you don't have to balance so much all the time and you're standing, so you don't have to get wet and cold. You also have a sticks to support yourself. So I remember when I wanted to learn snowboarding, I was really frustrated because I was falling down all the time and I just couldn't get it. So I can imagine for somebody like Sanya who doesn't even have much motivation to learn, it must be so much more frustrating and harder. as I said before, you can choose to either take a red route, which is more harder, or this blue one, which even though is less steep, is also more narrow, so you don't have much place to do the turns. And also you need to be careful of other skiers. So for Sanya, the hardest part is to keep going straight because she's scared that she will get too much speed and won't be able to brake. So here is the less steep, so it's more opportunities for Sanya to do turns, but her weak spot is to turn from the tips to the hills. So here I'm explaining to Sanya how you have to switch your weight from the hills to toes when you have to turn. And you always have to keep your body weight forward, otherwise you're gonna fall back. So now we have finally the right steepness for Sanya to practice the turns. But another problem can be the snowboarders and skiers behind, and it's like you're feeling that somebody will bump into you. But in this case you have to just do your thing and not care who is behind you, because they are the ones who should pay attention. So you see, once Sanya got more practice and the slope got less steeper, she's doing pretty good turns. And as you see, some parts are not even steep enough to do any turns, you just have to go straight. So if you have enough motivation, it doesn't matter how many times you fall, eventually you will get it. Okay, so we are almost down at the Bad Gastein, and it took us almost 1 hour to get down here from the top station. So I think if you're a beginner like Sanya and you want to learn at this big skiing center, it's much more worth it to buy a one-way ticket rather than half-day or the whole day tickets, because she's pretty much done after this long ride anyway. And even if we went up again with the lift, she would maybe do 2 or 3 rides maximum, which would be financially not worth it if you buy the whole day ticket. So it's fascinating how much less snow is down here. You can see they have to put the snow with the machines here. Alright, so we finished with snowboarding in Austrian Alps, and as I said before, we have 5 more hours of driving to go back to Slovakia. And even though it's a nice sunshine, we didn't want to drive in the darkness. So I would definitely come back to Austrian Alps even in the winter, but instead of snowboarding, I would come back for some alpine skiing, which I find more interesting. So on the way back, the GPS took us some side roads, not on the main highway. So I hope you enjoyed the Austrian countryside. And we thought it would take us much more time going on these smaller roads, but in Austria the roads are in much better conditions than in Slovakia, so it was quite fast ride. So looking at the nature in Austria, they seem to have really high standards for protecting the environment. Mainly the energy production, you can see lots of windmills when you go after Vienna, but also the factories seem to be more regulated and modern. Despite of all these measures, there is not much difference between Slovakia and Austria when it comes to environment. Slovakia has a 40% forests area, whereas Austria has 44%. On the other hand, it seems to me like in Slovakia the wildlife protection is much better. We have 700 to 900 brown bears, whereas in Austria the brown bears basically extinct. There's only like 2 permanent bears. Same goes for other Western countries like Italy or Switzerland. They basically have no wild bears there. I think the main reason, of course, could be the hunting in a history, or also could be a privatization of the land. And here we're passing by Dachstein Mountains, so we're cycling on the other side of the mountains. We're living in a little town Gossau, from where you can also go to the Gossau lakes, and then from there you can also get up to Dachstein. Or you can also get up from Hallstatt by this lift. I also want to mention that we're looking up to these Western countries like Austria, Switzerland, Germany, Italy. Like they know it all, they're on top just because they have more money and the business is going better there. But when you look at it, the wildlife protection is not much better than in other countries. If you look at Eastern Europe, they have a much more population of brown bears and other wildlife. Deforestation is on much larger scales in these Western countries because of the privatization of the land. You would think that they are much smarter or something, that veganism would be skyrocketing here, but that's not the case. Veganism is pretty much on the same level as in Slovakia or other Eastern countries. So better economy doesn't necessarily mean better country. And as I said before, the country's natural beauty doesn't equal that the country is good. There is insane natural beauty in Venezuela and Ecuador, but both countries are pretty dangerous. So it is one of my dreams and goals to learn mountain climbing, and we'll be able to climb these steep walls, but of course during the warmer summer months. So despite prohibited wild camping, as I mentioned before, Austria is still a good country for hiking. You have marked trails pretty much everywhere, and the accommodation prices are comparable to Slovakian. But for example, the infrastructure is better in Austria than in Slovakia. They have more cycling paths here, especially in Vienna. But anyone who visited Vienna must have noticed the problems with immigrants there, especially from Muslim countries. And often when we were walking to the park, it felt like you're in Saudi Arabia and not in Austria. Alright guys, that's it for this Austrian adventure. I hope you enjoyed Salzburg and snowboarding in Austrian Alps, and also this review of Austria and showing you the nature. Next, we're gonna spend some more time in Slovakia celebrating my birthday before traveling again to Serbia. Stay tuned for more adventures, and as always, stay healthy and stay adventurous.